Hi, and welcome to Freshwaves. I'm your host, Bren Masson. The month of April is Organ Donation Awareness Month in Canada. We'll be spending this entire month bringing you extraordinary stories about extraordinary people living extraordinary lives due to the gift of organ transplant. If you have not already done so, please go to beadonor.ca and sign up to be an organ donor. Today, we're going to be talking with Mary Jo Vratis, who is a kidney recipient. She spent many years on dialysis and finally got her kidney, so she's now living with a donor kidney and is living an extremely productive and happy and wonderful life. And we're going to be talking with Canadian film producer and director Rick Esther Bienstock. Now, Rick is a documentary filmmaker, and she's best known for investigative documentary. She was born in Montreal, Quebec, and she has received many, many, many awards, including the prestigious Gordon Sinclair Award for Broadcast Journalism from the Canadian Academy of Cinema and Television. And today we're going to be talking about her film, Tales from the Organ Trade. Again, if you haven't already done so, please consider going to beadonor.ca and signing up to be an organ donor. Good morning, ladies, and welcome to Fresh Waves.
Morning. Good morning. Nice to be here.
Rick, you've done this documentary called Tales from the Organ Trade, and it was done quite a while ago, but boy, it's still poignant to this day. Can you tell us a little bit about that documentary?
Sure. The documentary is kind of as described in the title. It's Tales from the Organ Trade. And we really went to investigate initially the black market in human organs. And the film turned out, we went on this journey and it ended up not only being about that, but actually delving into the shortage of organs, the medicine behind that, the international world of people who are desperate for organs because there is a shortage, and people who are desperate for money who sell their organs. So it really took us, everywhere from Canada to the United States, to the Philippines, to Turkey, to Israel, to Kosovo, which wasn't initially anticipated, but that's where the story took us.
And through that documentary, you met Mary Jo, who is joining us this morning as well. Good morning, Mary Jo.
Good morning, Brenda. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Happy to be here.
So how did you guys meet?
Well, Mary Jo we started filming with Mary Jo very, very early on. And we met Mary Jo because to start off, we did, and I was working with, an amazing team. We met with nephrologists and surgeons to try and get a picture of the lay of the land, particularly in Toronto, because that's where we're based, but, elsewhere as well. So we met with Mary Jo's doctor and asked if there was anyone that he thought might be someone who was in need of a kidney and who was articulate and who might be willing to take part in a documentary film. And that's how we met Mary Jo. And from the minute you meet Mary Jo, you fall in love with her and her family. So, and she was very, very open to taking part, feeling that it was an important issue. Mary Jo, you can speak for yourself on that front, but I think it was because you felt it was an important issue to communicate and an important story to tell.
Yeah, when I first was approached, the whole point was awareness. So, for me, that made a lot of sense because obviously I come from a family riddled with kidney failure. So when we were given the opportunity to talk about it and let people know that how serious this really is, it made sense for me.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about that.
There's 6 people, including me, that have kidney failure. So my grandmother passed away at 38. My mother passed away after 25 years on dialysis. Her brother passed away on dialysis, and then there's me, my brother, and my cousin, and we've all received successful kidney transplants. So there's quite a few of us. I was diagnosed when I was 18.
Wow.
And my brother actually got tested to give me a kidney, and then we found out his were worse than mine. So all three, me, my mom, and my brother were all on dialysis at St. Michael's Hospital at the same time.
That's incredible. You hear all the time that it is hereditary, but to that extent, holy mackerel.
It's pretty rare. It's pretty rare for that to happen. I mean, we're well known at St. Michael's Hospital for that reason, because very rarely do you see a family that close in age all together at the same time going through the same thing.
Wow. For people who haven't seen the documentary, I would suggest that they see it. It's just a really terrific documentary. Were you hesitant at first, Mary Jo, to participate in something that would expose so much of your life?
No, surprisingly, I wasn't. I mean, to be honest, I didn't really know what it was going to be. All I knew is that it was hopefully going to help promote awareness for organ donation and to help end the problem of low donation rate. I think Canada is one of the lowest in the world. And I've always been curious as to why we don't have an opt-out system. There's a lot of issues which, are going to be difficult to talk about in the limited amount of time we have. But I waited on the list for 9 years. And Rick kind of delves into that topic in her film about what it's like to wait versus what it would be like to actually purchase an organ. So that's kind of what the film brings up, is just the different ways of going about it and what that actually looks like.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll add to that. I mean, in a way, when I started making the film, that my thoughts about the black market were very, very black and white, and obviously negative. I mean, the black market by definition is negative. But when I met Mary Jo's family and her amazing mother, who had been on dialysis for a very long time, I don't think I, as a person who does not have kidney disease in my family, understood really how difficult it is to be on dialysis, particularly to be on dialysis long term. There's just no way to lead a normal life. Mary Jo is exceptional in that she was giving herself dialysis at home because she tried to keep her life as normal as possible. But if you're going to a hospital every second day, it's hard to hold down a job. And dialysis, actually, your health deteriorates while you're on dialysis. So while it's keeping you alive, it doesn't do the job of a proper kidney. So that one of the things that you really get to feel is how challenging it is and how important it is to be able to get a kidney, to get an organ as quickly as possible, and why it's so important for us to sign our organ donor cards, which doesn't even necessarily mean that our organs will be used. You have to die in a certain way for your organs to be actually useful. And that took me to somebody who was a gentleman who was in his 60s, who also needed a kidney. And there was no way he was going to get to the top of the list. He simply wouldn't be prioritized. He wouldn't make it before he died. And that kind of desperation leads to people looking for solutions on the black market. So it gave me a little bit of a head spin, because I was thinking, wait a minute, if I was 60, I might think about, started asking myself, would I just resign myself to this kind of slow death? Or would I consider alternatives? And that's what we explored in the film. And we kept coming back to Mary Jo, who really felt that the black market was dangerous and unethical, and that wasn't a route that she was willing to go. And so swirling around Mary Jo's story are the stories of people who made alternative choices, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. It's not a pretty picture, but you really have to delve inside the world of people who are really living it. And I feel that Mary Jo and her mother and her brother and the family, and Mary Jo has a child, and the child has special needs. And when you watch this, you realize what an exceptional burden it is to have to continue and you're incredible, Mary Jo. You're incredible not only because of your attitude, but also because of your energy and your positive attitude and just the way you handled it. But hanging out with Mary Jo's family was a real eye-opener. And I think, I'm sorry, I'm rambling a bit, but just as someone who didn't understand if you told, in my mind, when I thought about kidney disease prior to making this film, I just thought, oh, there's dialysis. I didn't understand what it meant exactly. It's just that, so it's not, it's not a death, it's not a sure death. But until you get into that world and understand how difficult it is, you don't really realize how strong you have to be emotionally and physically to endure dialysis.
Yeah, it's something the executive producer of this show, Jason Rumball, he's also a kidney recipient, and after 20 years with a kidney that was donated by his sister, a living donor, he's back on dialysis again. And seeing the struggle and the time it takes out of your life it's incredible.
I don't think people understand most people don't understand what dialysis is, and that's part of the problem. Again, we come back to awareness, because if I tell people that I'm on dialysis, more often than not, they don't know what that is. And for those out there who don't, it's essentially a machine that keeps you alive. It's not a cure. All it does is buy you time. It helps filter your blood, but it doesn't do all the things that a normal kidney would do. So you do over time get sicker. If you don't qualify for a transplant soon, other things start to break down in your body, which is what happened to my mom after 25 years on dialysis, because she was no longer well enough to receive a kidney because she spent so much time on the machine. Whereas, me, after 9 years, I was getting very sick. And if I didn't get a kidney soon, I likely would have fallen down the same path.
Mm-hmm.
So it is and I've watched a lot of people go through it, and some people tolerate it and some people don't, because you actually have to connect yourself to this machine where your blood comes out of your body, goes through this filter and goes back in, and you have to do it for a number of hours a day. So like you said, it's very hard to hold a job, to live a normal life, to imagine the things that you do in your daily life where, maybe you have a relationship, you need to go grocery shopping, you need to, like, when you're on dialysis for 5 hours, you're zapped of all your energy. It's not taking out just the toxins in your body, it's taking out everything. So when you're done, you need recovery time. So, it's just not as easy as people might think.
Mm-hmm. How old were you when you received your kidney?
Well, I was 24 when I started dialysis, and I was 33 or 34 when I received my kidney.
Wow.
So, I went through my 20s on a machine. So that was building my career. I got married. I had a baby on dialysis. And I literally built my life while living on a machine. So
That's
it was,
incredible.
I think about it now, and it's like another lifetime ago, but yeah, it wasn't easy.
No. And you did the home dialysis, so you were doing this yourself.
I was so at the time when I started dialysis, nocturnal dialysis wasn't really a thing. They were just bringing it out. And my nephrologist was amazing. He was very young and progressive, and he saw that I was young, and he told me that, hey, you should try this because it's the best opportunity for you to lead a normal life. And by nocturnal, we mean that you actually set your machine up and you do dialysis at home overnight versus during the day. Because normally you would go to the hospital 3 to 4 times a week, and you spend 4 or 5 hours at the hospital, which makes it very difficult to do anything like in terms of a job. So that's what I did. I was one of the first 200 people to start nocturnal dialysis. So I had to do a 5-week training course, learn how to be my own nurse, learn how to put needles in my arms, 15 gauge needles every day, hook myself up. And then you also have a delivery because you have to set this machine up. So it's a very invasive process. Like, I was newly married, I had a baby, and I had to go through this process of setting up a machine, tearing it down, and being on dialysis 7 to 8 hours a night. So as much as it was better for me health-wise, like I was able to get pregnant, number one, which I wasn't able to before. And I was able to eat more because I was now getting, 38 hours of dialysis versus the typical 12 per week. So it's a big difference.
Mm-hmm. But it's very involved, the home dialysis.
There's a lot of product. So you have your machine, but then you have to, there's blood tubing that you have to put in. There's filters, there's bicarbonate, there's acid. Like, there's a lot of stuff that has to be delivered to your house on a monthly basis. So you're loading, unloading, lots of garbage. So I actually had problems with the garbage people, because when you tear apart the machine, there's still remnants of blood in the tubing. And one of our garbage bags broke, and the garbage man got really upset seeing it, and it was like, well, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of complications that go with it that most people probably wouldn't understand. But again, it did give me some semblance of a normal life, and it gave me a chance to have a career and have a life where I wouldn't have been able to if I was going to the hospital 4 times a week.
Right. Now, Rick, when you were filming all of this, what was your initial thought? Did you go in thinking, like most people, that dialysis really isn't that big of a deal?
Well, by the time, I mean, I just didn't totally understand it. As I said earlier in Mary Jo, I understood kind of what dialysis was, but I didn't understand the time. It was a concept to me of being hooked up to a machine that somehow did something positive for you, but I had no idea how long, 3 times a week. And then by the time I was filming, obviously I was a bit more informed, and it became important to kind of convey to viewers how arduous that is to have a normal life, but more importantly, that it's not a cure. It's just a way to survive until you get an organ. And that's a big difference. And as I hung out more with Mary Jo, it's just, you have to, this is what, again, it's what we tried to do in the film, but even as a human being or human beings making the film, the entire crew was all very moved by, everybody in the family, and Mary Jo's family had a different kind of dialysis. And so it was a real way inside a world to show you what people live through and how difficult it is. And the idea of that, as Mary Jo said, she participated in the film because it was a way to I guess not tell the world, but communicate, hopefully increase organ donation, information. That's why she did it. But we make these films for the same reason. Like, you realize there's a problem, and hopefully, I mean, there's no quick solution, but earlier Mary Jo mentioned an opt-out system. So in Canada, you have to sign up to be an organ donor, but in countries like Spain, you actually have to opt out. So it's assumed that the entire population is an organ donor. And if you don't want to, for religious reasons or any reasons, you can just say, no, thank you, and sign out. And of course, that increases the pool enormously, because anytime you're at any, if this ever comes up, people always go, yeah, I meant to sign up, I just never got around to it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And if that happens, you're losing potential donors. And the truth is, you have probably a better chance of needing an organ than giving your organ, even if you sign up, because signing up doesn't mean your organ goes. You have to die. So there are little things like that, where that small policy change, if it increases the pool marginally and it saves a handful of lives, that's worth it. And that's what you hope to convey in doing projects like this. And also, you can now be a little bit more sympathetic to people who might opt to go the black market route because they're desperate. Everybody wants to live, and it's very, who wants to judge somebody who wants to stay alive? And again, in the film, one of the gentlemen we follow, he felt that he remortgaged his house, and he said, maybe the person that I'm getting it from, like, I'm hoping that all the money I'm paying will help them too. So, it's not, so it's morally complex, I guess, and it made me question
It's
my
not
own.
it's not black and white for sure. Like, there's
Yeah.
definitely a lot of gray areas that I think are uncovered in this film, and it really kind of opens up the thought process. It's like, what I found, because when I watched the film, I didn't really know anything about it until I saw it. It's very thought provoking, and I think that was the idea. It's like, maybe we need to start thinking about this on a broader context. You can't just make assumptions. Like, just look at it and say, okay, now that I know a bit more about this, I can make an educated decision, which I find in most cases when I speak to people and I tell them a little bit about this, people are happy to sign their donation cards once they understand. It's not that they wouldn't, they just don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
find
agree.
that quite often. And one of the things that this show has done year after year, we've been doing it now for about 8 years, the organ donation awareness shows. It's just so many people are heartfelt, really, really, really wanting to help, and they just don't know how. And when you explain how simple it is, they're, oh, okay. And what happened to me
Yeah.
was 4 years in, somebody was talking about the fact that you don't just sign your license anymore. You go to be a donor.ca. And when I went, I realized I hadn't signed in.
Right.
I'm doing all the shows, and I thought I had because way back in the day, I signed some piece of paper that was included in my driver's license renewal. And I didn't realize that I actually had to go to be a donor.ca
Hmm.
and register. So there you go.
Yeah. And
That's why shows like what you're doing are so important, because also there's new generations, there's people who haven't heard, and again, that's not going to entirely solve the problem, but it's definitely a step in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I found really compelling about the documentary was the story of the people's lives on both sides of the black market, on the desperate soul who is looking for a kidney, and on the side of the people who say basically, why can't I? I want to get a better place for my family to live. Why can't I sell a kidney? And I found myself looking at him thinking, yeah, why not? And it
Well,
was,
or maybe open up a compensation system like of some kind. Because I mean, it's not to say that people don't want you, because there is the living donor option too, right? There's
mm-hmm,
the option of people saying, you know what, I mean, because you can live with one kidney and or you can donate part of your liver. Like there's the living donor options are liver and kidney. So you can like I don't think a lot of people know about that, and it needs to be talked about. It just needs to be talked about.
The interesting thing about a living donor is that, I mean, again, too much to cover in this show, but the interesting thing is if, often people get kidneys from friends or family if they need it. Not often, but sometimes they do, and that's possible. And the person who is giving the kidney gets completely tested up and down and A to Z to make sure that they are physically capable of doing it, that it's not endangering their lives. They are, talked to by psychologists to make sure that they're mentally able to do it. So there's a way to do it that medical doctors deem is ethical, and you're considered a hero if you give your kidney. And by the way, I encourage people who have the courage to do that because that's an incredible gift of life that you're giving to somebody. And we have two kidneys, and we can survive with one. And in fact, some people, by the way, when I've heard these stories, some people, when they have either a medical issue or they go to donate, discover that they were born with one kidney and they didn't know, because you wouldn't know unless you ever, unless someone was looking for that. Um, and the interesting thing about people who are, at least the people who I met who decided to go the black market route, and imagine how desperate you must be to
mm-hmm.
to come from a place and decide that you're going to go halfway across the world to a strange country with physicians that you don't know and a donor that you don't know. Meaning, I'm not entirely defending it, but you have to just put yourself in the shoes of how scary that would be.
Mm-hmm.
And then meeting the donors or the people who sold their kidneys, you start realizing they are selling their kidneys in the context of a black market. That is the worst condition in the world to possibly do that, because that means you're probably not tested A to Z. You might not be the ideal candidate. So, but they are also desperate for money. And it's so kind of instinctively unethical for us to think about selling our own organs. But then when someone says, should I sell my daughter instead? Should, it really makes you kind of step back. And there's no answers in the film. But I went through this journey of complete discovery where kind of my own moral I question my own morality, and I wanted viewers to go through that same thing because it's such a complex issue. And then why, if you donate your organ, is it such a heroic thing to do? But if you sell it, it's such a heinous thing to do. Again, there's no answer, but I spoke to, they never made it into the film, but I actually spoke to philosophers and surgeons and about this, and it was really interesting to explore, and it really touches on kind of ethical gray areas that are where there are no easy answers. But when it comes to life or death, people are going to choose life. That's
the survival instinct, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I hate to take a break, but it's that time of the show. You're listening to Freshwaves. I'm your host, Bren Masson. Today we're speaking about organ donation and organ donation awareness. Go to beadonor.ca and sign up today to be an organ donor. We'll be right back right after this short break. Stay tuned. We're back on Fresh Waves. I'm your host, Bren Masson. Today we're speaking with Rick Esther Bienstock. She's an award-winning documentary filmmaker here in Canada. And we're speaking with Mary Jo Vratis, who is a kidney recipient. The two ladies met during the filming of Rick's documentary called Tales from the Organ Trade. Let's get back to the show. Okay, so you did this film in 2013, but recently you had a screening of the film and an open panel discussion about it. Did you find that there's been any changes between when you first did the film and when you have now shown it again all these years later?
I want to hear what Mary Jo says, but I will say I haven't watched the film in a long time, and Mary Jo and I sat and watched it again, and I'm actually very thrilled to say that it holds up. Like, it could have been made last year. Some films don't kind of hold up, so many years later, and I don't think very much has changed, actually. I think we still have an opt-in system. We're still pushing people to sign their donor cards. We keep talking, and I think there have been advances in medical science about potentially using other organs from other animals, or organs that are created in a lab. Well, we're not there yet. And I'm interested, Mary Jo, you're more tapped into the world, but from my point of view, I don't see how much has changed.
Yeah, I have to say, unfortunately, I agree. I mean, yes, there is more awareness than probably what there was back then, for sure, but no significant changes have been made. The biggest thing for me, I guess, personally, is that a lot has changed since then, because my mother passed away, and watching it brought back, like, it's been 10 years pretty much. Yeah. So watching it was it brought up a lot of stuff, but when I consider where we were at then versus where we are here today, not enough has changed. Not enough.
In a philosophical sense, though, the other panel members, did they have anything new and interesting to contribute, or are we still dealing and grappling with the same moral issues as we were years ago?
You know what came up that was interesting for me is somebody did ask me how I felt about it now, if I would still wait, like if I had to do it again, would I still wait 10 years on the list? And to be fair, like, I was much younger then when I got my transplant than I am now. And my answer is different. Mm-hmm. Like, now I have a son, and now I have a career, and I have a life. And the thought of going back on dialysis and waiting for another 10 years is horrifying to me. Horrifying. Yeah. And I have to say, like, I think I would have a very different opinion on that.
And in reality, reality is that the wait time is the same. It's 8 to 10 years.
Well, especially for my blood type, because I'm an O, and O is a universal donor. So it's different in different areas of the city. It's different for what blood type you are, but because I can only receive from an O, but an O can give to everybody. So it's definitely the longest list. Mm. But in the film, I realized back then that if you lived in a different part of the city, your weight was actually a lot less
Different
than
part
it
of the
is.
province.
Different part of the province. Yeah. So, and I didn't know that at the time. So yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for me was realizing that, 10 years later, I wouldn't make the same decision. I would actually probably explore something different.
Even when we made the film, actually, there was somebody who, again, we had talked to and filmed a bit, and he was going for his second kidney, and he said, "I can't afford to wait." That was exactly right. He just didn't have. He said, "I just don't have a choice." I mean, you always have a choice, but this is, again, with a choice of life or death, or dialysis. He couldn't do it either. So it's not going away, and at the very least, I am surprised there's been no movement and not enough of a push to have an opt-out system in Canada, because it seems like at the very least that would increase the pool, and also maybe more education about live organ donors. In fact, family members could do it, but often friends are willing to do it, but they might need some financial support to take some time off work. So, if they might need it. This is where it gets complex. They might need incentivization might help, and then it becomes payment, and that becomes complicated and unethical. But better minds than myself could perhaps come up with some kind of a solution that doesn't.
But there are people out there willing to do these. Like they have altruistic reasons. They want to help, but they may not be able to because of financial reasons. And the perfect example was I did have somebody willing to donate to me back then, and they were a single mom, and her biggest concern really was taking the time off work. It wasn't that she didn't want to do it. She just thought, okay, but if I do this, it is an invasive surgery. I mean, removing the kidney is actually more invasive than receiving it. So she would have had to take time off work, and it would have been unpaid because that's not something that they cover. So, and because you have to do this for altruistic reasons and there cannot be any payment involved, she couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And in that situation.
That's the part to me that just doesn't make any sense, that there isn't support for the organ donor. And I'm not talking support like, here's $100,000, give me your kidney. I'm talking, you're going to need 6 weeks off of work, 6 weeks to 8 weeks. Can we work out something with your employer where they're going to continue paying you because you've decided to do this wonderful thing for someone else? I don't think that's unreasonable.
I don't think so either. But even when it comes to insurance, like this is not something that's covered. Period. Wow. It's not even like there's just nowhere for it to fit. Because I had another person who was willing to donate, and it became an insurance issue. His life insurance would have been canceled. So, these are issues that I think need to change.
Yeah, they do for sure, and that's what I would think would have changed since 2013, but it hasn't. But I do have to say that Nova Scotia now is has deemed consent, so they've decided that they are definitely going to do this, but it hasn't been implemented because there are so many things that have to be done before it can be implemented. And they have discovered that there really needs to be a massive education platform put out there so that people who are new to this country, people who are new to the language, understand what the opt-out system is.
Yeah.
It's a massive undertaking, but I commend them for at least going this far.
Well, there's really no reason not to. I mean, what's wrong with educating everybody? It's, I mean, I think the other thing we need to educate people on is why kidney disease is on the rise. And honestly, diabetes is one of the leading causes, and people don't know that either. Like educating people about basic health should be our number one priority.
Yes.
But for whatever reason, it isn't.
Yeah, because our health system is based on Band-Aids when you're already sick, as opposed to preventative health measures, which has been a big discussion for years and years and years.
Yeah, and that actually just take us into about 5 more films.
Oh, so. It would. And 4 more hours of radio.
Yeah.
Have you got plans to re-release this film in some way where the general public can all see it, or is there a way where people can go and take a look at this film?
Well, it's funny that you asked while I was on with you. I just kind of Googled to go, wait a minute, where is the film? Because I thought it was on Amazon Prime, but it's not on Amazon Prime, but you can rent it from Amazon. It's not on Prime Video,
Okay.
but you can rent it. It might be in other, on other platforms, but I think that would be the most accessible to everyone. It used to be on Amazon Prime, so I don't know because we have distributors who take care of that. But if anyone wants to see it, I think that would be your best, easiest bet, at least here in Canada. And we, it was interesting because when we had this screening, I actually I said to Mary Jo, I felt nervous about, is it still relevant? And I really feel it is. And it makes me feel like I want to have another screening to try and capture, like you said, there's immigrants, there's a new generation and people who could use to understand what's going on. And I don't know how to do that. It's very tough on films that are a little bit older. But I would love to see it, maybe in high schools or in higher ed, and I'm going to work on that.
Mm-hmm. Well, it is Organ Donation Awareness Month in April,
right.
So, I agree with you, and I think that one of the things that Toby Boulay spoke about was that his son brought this up to him at the kitchen table in a conversation where Toby looked at Logan and said, "I don't want to talk about this. You're 19 years old. I don't want to talk about this." And wow. Logan had said, I want to talk about it. I want you to know that if anything should ever happen to me, I want my organs to be donated. And unfortunately, Logan passed away in the Humboldt crash. And Toby knew, though. He knew that his son had wanted his organs to be donated. And that's the first thing he said to the doctors at the hospital. And it started a surge in this country that we've never seen before in people going and signing on to be organ donors because they finally saw a situation where out of such misery, 8 other people were saved because of Logan's decision. And a young man...
That was one of the biggest pushes I've seen probably since the film is when that happened. And it was a terrible situation,
mm-hmm.
but something good did come out of it, and it was amazing because people did start, with their, they started promoting the green ribbon and the hockey sticks, and there was a sense of community and understanding, and thought, wow, out of this tragedy, 8 lives were saved. It was an amazing thing, and I think if people can take that as an example, just to say, look, let's have this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Let's at least talk about it,
and at least have it when people are, or educate them when they're young enough to go out into the world and start making decisions for themselves and start talking about really important issues. You don't have to wait till you're a senior to talk about dying. And then the seniors, like my mom says to me on the weekend, she's 92. And I said, have you signed on to the donor? I've got my computer here. We can do it. And she says, nobody wants my organs. I'm 92 years old. But it's not true. There's lots of parts of her that could be used if she so chooses.
Yeah, no, it's true. Well, again, when the film was first released, certain festivals in the States, I think one was in Memphis, they invited the Kidney Foundation to the screening, and they would have donor sign-up cards after the screening at tables, and it was such, I don't know how many people signed up right in the moment, but it was one of those where they wanted to capture people when they witnessed something and realized, oh, I should really sign. And then they would capture them right there. So there's lots of, I think most people, there are people who don't want to for all sorts of reasons, but most people do. And it's a question of catching it at the right time, and that motivates them to remember to go home and sign up in the moment, right?
Mm-hmm. That's why, of course, the opt-out program would be so much better.
Yeah.
And you're also then, you you don't have that horrible situation where a life has ended unexpectedly, and now you have to think, oh, what would that person have wanted versus what would I want as the person who's now responsible for this individual who's passed away, and at an extremely emotional time in your life.
Yeah.
I mean, at those times, people will tell you they feel like they're numb. They feel like they're in a trance, like they can't make a decision. And people are asking them to make such an important decision.
Yeah. Well, even when I talked to the doctors who were doing these black market organs, these, in quotations, organ traffickers, and they just said so matter of fact, I'm saving lives. I'm a doctor. What am I supposed to tell my patient? These are, one of them was a doctor who was advising and helping his patients go the black market route. He goes, what am I supposed to tell them? It's illegal, so you should just die. And, when I asked, well, what about the donor issue? Like you're really, you're looking for donors from impoverished countries. You're desperate people who are compelled by their own poverty, coerced by their own poverty. It really is how it's looked upon. And they go, yeah, the donor issue is a problem because it's not legal. And they were arguing for legalizing or regulating it in some way. But, I mean, I don't come to any conclusions, but I thought it was interesting to explore all of those ethical conundrums that you face when you talk about something like this, an issue like this.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's hard to describe it on the air. When you see the film and you see the people and you see the man looking to get an organ on the black market, he's a nice man. His family are nice people. And you see them all together and you think, why should this man die if there's some way that he doesn't have to?
The other side was this one young man who I met in the Philippines. And I mean, even as I think of it now, it kind of chokes you up. He was so desperate for the money because there was no way with what he made with kind of work, odd jobs here and there. He just had a baby, and there was no way he could potentially save up. I mean, he was literally subsistence living. He's working just for food. And so he saw this as a way out. Now, I'm not saying it's a good way out. I mean, it would be much better to abolish poverty. But him and his wife were so desperate for him to sell his kidney. And it was very hard watching. It was very hard watching and being witness to both sides of this issue. And just looking into the eyes of people who were either desperately poor or desperate to live. It's a very difficult thing to witness without, and that's the whole point of the film, is to kind of take you there and show this to you. And anyway, I'm babbling on a bit, but it was just a very, very, I didn't expect to be so conflicted, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
And I think that's one of the things I like the best about the film is I sat down, just like you said in the beginning. I sat down and I said, there's no question. This is a black and white situation. And at the end of the film, I thought, oh, this is so not black and white. You introduced us to all sides of an issue. And I was just so confused at the end because I could see, yeah, but that guy's so needy, and if that's what he wants to do, and all of his intentions are so great with wanting to give his kidney and wanting to sell his kidney. And the doctor who was performing the surgery and thinking that he was saving lives, and Mary Jo who was living with dialysis at home in her bed every night of the week, like it was just, there were so many things churning around. And then living with my wonderful friend Jason, who's now back on dialysis again. And I watched the film and it has, again, a whole new meaning.
Right. Also, there's a scene in the film, if you remember, where there's a gentleman who needs a kidney and his daughter does not want to be a donor. He doesn't ask her to, but she tells us on camera she just doesn't feel comfortable. She doesn't want to give away part of her body. She kind of feels guilty, but she just doesn't want to do it. And that is another side of the story too, is that, I heard these stories about families where in some cases families will absolutely want to give. But, some of the doctors were telling me that there would be families where if there's, 3 kids and 2 are successful and have their own children and one is a bit of a ne'er-do-well, there's a lot of pressure on that person to give a kidney. And that was another interesting aspect I never thought of. And doctors told me, or some doctors told me, that because people are evaluated before they give a kidney, not only physically, but psychologically, that they would privately and discreetly give a family member a medical out. They would say to them, if you really don't want to donate, tell me and I will give you a medical out so that you don't have to tell your family you don't want to donate. And so it kind of tells you that people are in tune with the fact that it is complex even within families. And one doctor told me, he goes, you think there isn't payment in families? He goes, suddenly, he would have a child give a kidney and they would get a condo from their parents or something. But, I mean, that wouldn't be like a payment. That's just, maybe parents would help them anyway. But he was, there's just, he kept saying there's just no black and white. And even in the States, we filmed somebody who sold his kidney on Craigslist, but when he was being interviewed by the ethical committee at the hospital in Philadelphia, he didn't tell them that he sold it on Craigslist. Of course, he said he was donating the kidney. And given that he had no relationship to the recipient, you ask yourself if maybe that committee turned a blind eye to the fact. So there's all these, there's all these ethical issues swirling around that need to be considered as well.
Yeah, it's really complex. It's a really complex issue. Well, thank you, Rick, for bringing this to the forefront with a beautiful film that really illustrates the complexities of the issue. And thank you, Mary Jo, for allowing Rick to come into your life and show the world what it's really like to be on dialysis.
Thanks for having us and letting us talk about it.
Well,
We couldn't have done it without Mary Jo. She was incredible.
Yeah, she was. And I mean, I think when I look at the film, Mary Jo, I have to ask myself how hard that must have been for you to show complete strangers this side of your life.
It was. I mean, the hardest part for me was actually putting my needles in on camera. That if I look back, that was difficult, because it's hard enough doing it on your own, never mind doing it in front of a film crew. So that was, but I mean, I think again, I'm happy I did it because I see it, and I think if anything, it really paints the picture of what this is and what it looks like, and it was necessary. It was necessary to put that on film.
Mm-hmm. Do you mind if I ask you what your husband thought of this whole thing of doing the dialysis at home?
It was very invasive in our marriage. Even though it was the best thing for me, health-wise, we made that decision because it was the best thing for me health-wise. But when you actually go through it, it's a lot. It's still very difficult because you have this dialysis machine in your room, and it takes an hour to set it up, an hour to tear it down. You got to spend the time putting your needles in, like that's in your bedroom. So it wasn't an easy thing. Definitely, it was hard. It was hard on us. It was hard on our marriage. It was hard on our life. But health-wise, it was still the best thing for me. So definitely, it's a catch-22.
Mm-hmm. As it seems, this whole topic is a catch-22 of the organ trade. So I would like to thank you for coming on today and for talking about this again and allowing people into your lives and showing them what it's like to, number one, be on dialysis and suffering from kidney disease, and from Rick's point of view, to be going into the bowels of society, so to speak, and taking a look at the underside, the black market of organ donation. That must have been awfully brave of you, Rick. She laughs because she does this stuff all the time.
I think it was very brave. I mean, the things that she was able to uncover, I don't know that anybody, without she actually has a nose for this. I mean, without really digging, not everybody could do what she did. The way that she found all the pieces of the puzzle, wasn't an easy thing to do. Like she got people who are wanted on Interpol to do an interview. who can do that? Not many people. Like she's very persuasive and she's very well liked. So I don't see many people able to do what she did, and it was a very impressive thing for me to see for the first time, because I think they filmed us for a couple of years, and when you have to edit all of that, and then we saw it for the first time at a screening of 200 people. So when I saw it for the first time on a large screen, it made me think about a lot of things, because there's a lot of stuff I didn't even know about. Like I just knew about the part that she was filming with me and my family. I didn't know everything else. So when you can make somebody living it also think about all these things, like, you did a good job.
Thanks, Mary Jo, coming from you. That means a lot.
It's a very impressive film.
Very impressive film, and I encourage everyone to go and see it. If you haven't seen it already, it's called Tales from the Organ Trade, and it's definitely worth watching. Well, that's a wrap for Freshwaves today. Again, thank you for coming and joining us, and I really appreciate you taking the time to be a part of our Organ Donation Awareness Month here on Freshwaves.
Thank you so much. Register to be organ donors.
Beadonor.ca.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brenda, for this.
Hi, this is Bren Masson of Freshwaves. Just reminding you that if you'd like to hear this broadcast again, or other Freshwaves broadcasts and podcasts, you can go to our YouTube channel, Freshwaves Radio. We broadcast on Sunday mornings at 7 a.m. on 102.9 Whistle FM. I know that's early, but what a great way to start your day. Remember, one conversation can change a mind. One conversation, that's all it takes. Join us again next time on Freshwaves.